How's it going, YouTube? Comments in today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Is fun, and this is something that I really want to bring up because there's always so much dooming, and the game is dying, and you hear all these things, but, like, honestly, the game is in a very cool spot right now. There's a lot to do. I usually really hate diverse formats because a lot of the decks we get stuck with are just, like, tier 3, and they are only as good as the other one, which isn't the greatest. There's no, like, power scaling, right? Whereas even in this format, there's definitely power scaling, but there's quite a few decks that you can choose from that aren't just like bad choices, right? So I think that's pretty neat. And that's something that I really want to talk about today because especially even with upcoming events and the new format after that, I feel like there's going to be a lot of very interesting choices even then. Definitely go ahead and check my sponsors over on Gem, Cloud, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, RW, MainPhaze, and Grimoire down below in the description. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can hit our goal at 30,000. A side note for today, if you have not already checked out Arla, definitely go ahead and do so over on their website that will be posted down below in the description. Use code GGYGO if you want to go ahead and pick up one of their games. I really do enjoy Monster Capture Race because for me, playing board games is something that really is just such a fun time with friends. And for me, I've played so many different games and finally able to find one that plays very similar to the strategy games that we're already used to, including things like Yu-Gi-Oh! With dynamic movement. This is one of the most fun times I've had playing a game, truly. So if you can go ahead and check it out, give it a look, and then if you want to check it out. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So this format is fun. We have Crystron, we have Vanquishal, we have Yummy, we have Canine, not you. We have Dragon Tail. I feel like all these decks, except the one, is really a lot of fun to play against. They were really intuitive. And, you know, Mitsurugi, man. I'm not a fan. I do not think that deck is fun to play against. I do not think that deck is fun to play. I think that it has 8 different bricks in the deck, and if you play the deck and you don't see the bricks, you probably win the game. If you see the bricks, it's going to be a really hard time. But I'm not a huge fan of the Mitsurugi cards. I know a lot of people are, but there's also an equal amount of people that just aren't. They're just not very intuitive to play against. I like playing against it if I'm playing like tier, because they go Mirakumo to make you discard, and it's for effect, so you pitch a tier, right? And then they go, oh, that sucks. And you go, yup. That's why playing Draco Tail into it's really good, because you can like pitch Shit All Beast and draw a card, which is pretty funny, but just something else to think about. But I think that these are all really interesting decks, right? It's just not something that we're typically used to right now in the format, and there's a lot of different ways you can play, which I think is pretty unique, especially the fact that we have a couple different like synchro decks in the format right now, which is definitely pretty cool. There's a few things that need to get hit, to be honest, they really do. One thing is Mitsurugi Prayer. I think this card just needs to go to 1. I think this is definitely like the most obnoxious card, and having it in multiples is something that we don't really need in the format. It's something that can just get rotated out. Dormouse and X need to go to 1 each. I think both of these cards are just absurd still. They both still need to go to 1. And then Paradise Smasher just needs to go. Whether you think it's really broken or not, it's a card that is a problem, and it does need to get banned. A lot of people are like, well, these decks aren't really doing that well at the moment, so why do we care? Why do we need a ban list? The reason why we do is because people are just bored at the moment. And we see this happen all the time. This isn't like a new thing, right? Like, even when Dragon was the best deck, or like Snake Eye, toward the end of that format, we didn't see it just because everyone was playing new decks. And it's something that people don't always want to play the same thing, and they see new decks coming out, and the same players who are doing well with these decks swap to those decks because they're new and they're fun. Once people get bored of those decks and go back to the better decks, right, then you have Malice, Mitsu Rai, Ryzeal variants, you know, it's just not close with what some of these decks can do. A lot of these decks right now, Draco Tail, Vanquishal, they really need cards in hand, and cards like Mirakumo are just like, hey, I'm going to keep making you discard cards, right? And that's not very good for that deck. So something that you really got to keep in mind, that these decks are still around. People are just currently bored of them. But once they come back, they're going to be just as strong as they were in the previous format. And it's something that you got to keep in mind when we're looking at a ban list moving forward. My top picks for YCS Vancouver this weekend is going to be Memento Canine or Draco Tail. I think both of these decks have a very great opportunity to win this weekend. I really think the Memento deck is crazy if you understand how to play it and you play it well. I played against somebody at the regional, shout out to Joel. Played this deck amazing, like he played very, very well. And, you know, I did lose game 3 there, which was unfortunate for me, but seeing the deck in action and really being able to be played to like the fullest extent, I think that's something where if you really know how to play Memento, I think that deck could easily win this weekend, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. Draco Tail definitely needs a little bit more fine-tuning with what the perfect engine is to play with that deck, but I do think that there's going to be some very creative builds moving forward, and we'll definitely have to wait and see what they are. I think that it is true that this format has the most opportunity for creativity, and as you saw in my community tab, the tier limit Draco Tail list is a lot of fun. You have a lot of opportunities, so you're playing cards like Soliak, and if you use like Femina and you send the Rhino Heart from hand, you can just leave the Rhino Heart in grave and add back other things, and then Rhino Heart can activate to go ahead and like pitch the Soliak that you have in hand, summon back the Rhino Heart, chainlink 1 Rhino Heart, chainlink 2 Soliak, add a name, pitch a name, make a Kaleido Heart on your opponent's turn, right? So there's definitely a lot of very cool opportunities for this deck and something that you can keep in mind. But there's another thing right now that's also pretty creative. So even though I don't really care for the Mitsurugi cards, I think that there's a lot of very cool innovation that they can bring as well. The Miracle Raven builds are really cool, but what if I told you Habakiri does a lot more than just that? So, Habakiri here to summon out the Saji. We're going to be doing a standard line here to make it rank 4, just because you're going to see what we're going to do with that. And it's pretty based, I'm not going to lie. We're going to see a very old card coming back to the format. And I don't know how real this is, but it's definitely something that people are doing. We're going to make Banshee. Banshee's going to add, and we're going to add Birch. And so now we're going to turn that Banshee into a gravity controller, then go into Cupsy Yummy Way, which is pretty funny that you can combo like this. But it is very interesting. It's something that people are trying out, something that people are doing, because you can also go through like the Herald, the Arclight to go into your Mitsurugi cards if you need to. So definitely a very cool combo and something that I find to be very creative. I think that the K9 engine is probably one of the coolest engines that I've seen in a very long time. It feels very strong. It's something that you don't even have to play that many of the cards, but when you start seeing them, the cards themselves are very good. And I think the card quality of these have been very impressive in tournaments so far. And I'm definitely interested to see what's going to happen moving forward. But we already know that we're getting Noroi, and this card's kind of crazy. Being able to look at your opponent's hand, being able to have an Ice Ryziel in the deck, this is definitely very interesting. But for YCS Lille, which if you're going to be at YCS Lille, I'll be there, which is pretty cool. I've never been to a Euro YCS, and I'm very excited. But I will be at YCS Lille, and we're probably going to have a BAM list plus Dude. And that's insane. So in a very small amount of time, we're really going to have to ramp up testing and figure out what the best deck is. Now, if you're asking me, it's going to be the deck that has a brand new Ice Ryziel that looks at your opponent's hand. But we'll have to determine what that ends up looking like moving forward. But I really do like these cards. And honestly, I really like the Memento deck. I think that deck is very smart. I think that's very good. And that's something that you can definitely keep in mind, but I think that's going to be quite the pick right now. If you haven't already checked out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube channel, definitely go and do so all down below in the description. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great day.